We continue to wake up to concerning trends in the tropics this morning as we are tracking two separate tropical systems. One is now Hurricane Humberto. The other is what we call Invest 94L, basically a strong tropical wave, but it's well on its way to becoming Tropical Storm Imelda, and that'll be the name you hear the most over the next few to several days, and we'll explain why in this video. We're going to get very detailed. We're going to go over all model guidance from overnight into this morning. We'll discuss impacts, at least what we know on impacts, which isn't a whole lot, but we'll speak on what we know. And then we'll have a segment. We'll kind of geek out with you guys a little bit, discuss steering currents, what could promote strengthening with these two storm systems, and all of that. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it, and if anybody has anything I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. Stay tuned for the very end if you want to join us for a Bible devotion. So let's get rocking and rolling this morning. Let's make sure this is going to work. And it is. So we're good to go. We'll start off by taking a broad look at the entire Atlantic. This is now Hurricane Humberto. It's a 75 mile per hour Category 1 storm. It continues to strengthen this morning. And then we got Invest 94L. I'm just going to circle a very large area. It's very sloppy, just basically still a strong tropical wave. It's not been dubbed a depression or a named storm, which would make it Imelda. It's just an Invest right now. So we continue to watch it, and it has a high chance of developing over the next really 48 hours or so. So these two storm systems are very close to one another, and that's why I just wanted to show you the bigger picture of the entire Atlantic, just to show you how close they are to one another. So let's go on and move past this, and we'll take a closer look at both of these storm systems. This is Humberto. It's in the process of strengthening as the environment, and especially in the upper levels, is improving. Outflow will really get going with this system, and it really will begin to breathe and just thrive and live its best life out here in the Atlantic as it will continue to strengthen and just become a healthier hurricane. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a Category 2 storm by the time we get into this evening. So just a closer look at Humberto, and then we look at Invest 94L. Now the center of circulation, which there really isn't one right now, but they're trying to say the center of this Invest is somewhere into here. I'm just going to circle a very large area. You got a lot of shower and storm action kind of displaced way down here to the southeast. But this is just a typical looking beginning stages of a tropical system. So we just got a lot of energy that's ready to pop off at any time. Of course, if this is going to hang around the Greater Antilles for too long, it's going to continue to struggle to develop, just because you got the higher terrain of the Greater Antilles like Hispaniola and things like that. But this is certainly going to most likely become Imelda here in the next 24, 48, 72 hours or so. But believe it or not, these little blobs of colors are what's eventually going to become Imelda, and could bring a threat to the Bahamas and the southeast coastline as we get into early next week. It's hard to believe, but that is the case. So let's continue to move past this. And the latest from the National Hurricane Center, like I said, we got a Category 1 Hurricane Humberto, forecast to become a Category 2, strengthen a good bit. By the time we get into tonight, 105 mile per hour Cat 2 storm. And then by the time we get into tomorrow afternoon, it's a Category 3 major hurricane. And now the forecast peak intensity is bumped up to Category 4 status with Humberto, 130 mile per hour storm. It probably will weaken at some point as it moves further north, but now Bermuda is in the cone, and we will have a separate segment of this video just specifically talking about Humberto for a few minutes, but we are going to focus on future Imelda first. But this is the latest cone. Peak intensity has increased to a Cat 4 storm, and then this is Invest 94L, which is right where this area is, right over kind of the northern areas of Haiti. But of course, all the convection, shower, and storm activity displaced away from that, which is what we would expect from a weaker tropical system, but has an 80% chance to develop in the next 48 hours in this red area, and has a 90% chance to develop between now and the next several days or so. When we say develop, we mean into a depression or our next named storm, which is Imelda, the I name. So this is basically another way to look at the National Hurricane Center graphics, but it's kind of overlaid on a site called Zoom Earth, which is available to you guys as the public. It's like mixing the tropics with Google Maps. It's an awesome really cool sight to use, and I love using it during hurricane season. Now let's go over what everybody wants to see, sort of the fan favorite, right? All model guidance. We'll start off by speaking on Imelda and Imelda only. And I do want to note it's not Imelda yet, but we are fully expecting this to become Tropical Storm Imelda and maybe eventually Hurricane Imelda over the next several days. So we're going to start off with Saturday afternoon. If I forget to mention the time, the day of the week, the date, whatever it may be, just look up here. I know it's kind of small, but it is on your screen. So if you look here at the bottom of your screen, okay, this is what will be future Imelda slipping up and moving north. And as we continue to move forward, this is basically a strengthening tropical depression or tropical storm moving through the Bahamas, bringing impacts, heavy rain, gusty winds. There is a possibility it could end up becoming a hurricane pretty fast sometime later this weekend. And of course, that would bring more significant impacts to the Bahamas. So we'll continue to watch. But as this gets north of the Bahamas, a couple things happen. I think it begins to gain some strength. It gets a boost in the Gulf Stream, area of warmer waters off the coast of the southeast. So this could begin to strengthen. It's 1,002 millibar low. I want you to notice all the rain to the north of the low pressure, which is right here, the center of the storm. We'll talk more on that as we get deeper into the video. As we start to get into Monday evening, okay, here it comes. And I'm going to say this right off the bat. I might mention this a couple times during this update. I think this is going to be a sloppy hurricane. That doesn't mean we're not going to get any significant impacts. I think it's just not going to be a picture-perfect hurricane, like a classic-looking symmetrical hurricane. We'll speak more on that as we go along here. 998, that would make this probably a strong tropical storm. And the Euro gets this Tuesday morning as to a Category 1 hurricane, September the 30th, and almost makes landfall, but it kind of stalls off the South Carolina coastline, spins around. It's close enough, doesn't make a technical landfall, but it's close enough to bring tons of rain throughout the Carolinas and the southeast Georgia up to Virginia, especially the Carolinas. It's right off the coast of Charleston. And then it kind of gets tugged almost back to the southeast, and I think this is because of the tug from Humberto. We'll speak more on that here in a bit. And then after it detaches from the tug from Humberto to the east, then it begins to go back into the South Carolina coastline or the Georgia coastline later next week, like around this time next week, and then it finally makes a technical landfall. Ooh, that would be a disaster if that happens as far as rainfall. Might not be crazy winds, but as far as rainfall, that would be catastrophic. And you might think in your head, well, I don't see that craziness happening. It definitely could because of the wacky steering currents with this. So please don't think any scenario couldn't play out, guys. What about the latest GFS from this morning? Same thing, starting off tomorrow evening. We can say now that's how close this is to us. We're not talking about like 7 to 10 days from now. We got a tropical storm. GFS really pops this off quicker. I don't know if I buy that, but we'll watch. Has a tropical storm strengthening through the Bahamas. Already has this close to Category 1 hurricane status by the time we're getting to Sunday evening. And then we're getting into Monday morning and then Monday midday, early afternoon. And this is racing up into the South Carolina coastline and then makes landfall sometime Monday afternoon right into the South Carolina coastline, then plows a strong tropical storm, Category 1 hurricane right through South Carolina. And folks, if you don't know, if you're a new viewer, I live in central South Carolina. So of course, this is personal to me and to any of my folks in the Carolinas. And then this continues to move through and makes it all the way to an area we absolutely don't want this to go, which is the southern Appalachian Mountains, the North Carolina mountains, and we don't want to see that. We don't want to see the route that the GFS has taken there at all. We'll leave it at that. Okay? So, yeah. What about the Euro AI model? Now, this is the OOZ. The O6Z will run probably within the next hour. It might be out by the time this video drops, honestly. But it takes the system, gets into Monday morning. It's a little bit slower. And then Tuesday morning, it's still well off the coast of the southeast. It's a Category 1 Hurricane 987 millibar storm. But it gets yanked eastward by Humberto. Imelda does. It's a Category 1 2 hurricane, but it gets yanked away. But then it detaches a little bit, and it could kind of maybe slip back to the west. But on this particular model run, it does not. But, you know, this is a scenario we want to see. And we just got to watch. But the Euro AI model, I don't want to just not show you models that don't show a threatening scenario. I want to show you all of them. And let's look at the icon, which only goes out to 120 hours. But here it comes slipping through. A strengthening system icon really gets this going north of the Bahamas. So we get into Monday afternoon. We got a Category 1 hurricane. We get into Tuesday morning. You notice how it begins to slip back south again? Almost back into the northern Bahamas. And then it kind of gets tugged southeast, and then it starts to sort of just go back to the east. But if you were to keep this going, I do wonder if this would detach from the yank from Humberto and begin to head back to the north again. So, this only goes 120 hours out. What about the Canadian model? Here it comes, strengthening tropical storm later this weekend into the Bahamas, and then gets this into a Category 1 hurricane, gets it close enough to the Carolina coastline Tuesday to bring some impacts, a Category 2 hurricane off the coast, and then it gets pulled away, and then it releases from that pool Thursday evening next week, and then it acts like it wants to try to come back west some, and then eventually it continues to head on out to sea. So what about hurricane models? The H-Wharf model, we'll start this out Saturday evening, has just a sloppy, weak tropical storm tomorrow evening, or a depression moving through the Bahamas. All these little islands here you see, these are the Bahamas. And this continues, and by the time it gets to the northern end of the Bahamas, I really think you guys could see the most impacts as far as the Bahama Islands. And we get into Sunday midday, and this is a strengthening tropical system. Gets to a Category 1 hurricane by Monday afternoon, and then by Monday morning. Then by Monday afternoon, it wants to strengthen this into a 981 millibar hurricane, which is a Category 2 storm, and then basically takes this right into Wilmington, basically, as a Category 2 hurricane. And you notice how this thing has really weighted heavily to the northern side of the system. I think there's going to be a big dry air intrusion. That doesn't mean necessarily anything with impacts. It's just something we got to watch. But man, this is a really bad scenario for a lot of people. This would bring a strong hurricane, let's just say, into the southern North Carolina coastline, northern South Carolina coastline, sometime Monday night into Tuesday morning, and bring significant impacts well inland. HMON model, what does it show? Same thing, just kind of a sloppy system through the Bahamas, and then it begins to get strengthened, and Sunday afternoon, and then we get into Monday morning. This is a Category 1 to 2 hurricane, and then it makes landfall sort of between Charleston and Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, as early as Monday morning. And this brings more impacts further to the west, more impacts further back towards like Augusta, Columbia, Florence, and just this would be a scenario where it would plow it right towards the western North Carolina mountains. We don't want to see that and push a lot of, we just don't want to see that. We gotta avoid that somehow. And then the HF model is kind of the model we want to happen, right? It's so weird looking. It doesn't develop anything. So I go through the entire run. It finally does develop something in here. And you can see a low pressure. This might just be kind of a glitchy run, but there's nothing really to show you there. The HFB model is kind of initializing this wrong, and then it just kind of glitches out, and it skips us right into Monday morning, September the 29th, and has a strong tropical storm Category 1 hurricane just off the east coast of Florida, and then takes this to a strong Category 1 or 2 status and plows this right into like Beaufort, Savannah, Monday afternoon as a Category 1 or 2 hurricane, and brings significant impacts, basically grinds up the Georgia-South Carolina border, and then gets all the way to northern Georgia. Oof, man. Concerning trends, guys. I'm not going to lie with you. And this is the Euro Ensemble, makes up 51 members. And this is when we start to get into steering currents a little bit. I'll tease that. Of course, this is Humberto right here. We'll speak more on that here in a second. Let's focus on future Imelda, which is right here. I want you to notice how, let's go one more. I want you to notice, and this goes all the way out to Monday evening. All right, how some of these members right into here are racing off to the north. A lot of these members down here are kind of in the middle, and some of them are still way down here. What do you call that? You call that a difference in timing, right? You got slower members that are still trapped way down here near the Bahamas. Faster members already, Monday p.m. making landfall along the Carolina coastline. So there is a huge timing difference. So if you're asking, Mitch, when is this going to make landfall? Well, first off, we don't even know if it's going to make landfall. Second off, the timing is everywhere. But I can tell you it's a Monday into Tuesday type deal. We're confident in that. Where it's going to make landfall, how strong, to me, if I had to make a call, I would say as high end as a category 2, as low end is nothing happening at all. But, of course, my opinions on that could definitely change. But if you were to, keep this going here, there is some scenarios where on the Euro Ensemble where some of these members get yanked by Humberto, the pool, and, don't affect the southeast coastline. And then you got the Google DeepMind models here. And what's wild to me is with these, it really wants to kind of pull this to the east right into here, sort of getting into Sunday night and a Monday. And then it tries to get back and move sort of north-northwest. And then it starts to do some loop-de-loops. And these little curves right here that you're seeing, this is the concerning thing with me, because it tells me that we have confusing steering currents, meaning kind of steering currents pulling the system kind of one way, steering currents kind of pulling in the other. What does this cause? It causes basically a stall, and we could have a lot of rain getting dumped over some of the same areas for a long period of time. So you don't like to see these members just kind of dancing around right in here. You like to see the ones kind of getting pulled out, but you don't like them getting kind of dancing around into here. Okay, so let's show a little bit of love to Humberto really quick, and then let's move into a few other things that are related to both systems. Okay, so if you're tuning in from Bermuda or just interested in what Humberto can do, this is starting off Monday afternoon. The Euro wants this as almost a Category 5 hurricane. Forecast intensity is a Cat 4, not too far off. And then as we're getting into Tuesday, we're getting into Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. This makes a very close pass. Bermuda right here to your to your west and northwest. I don't think it would be close enough to bring significant impacts, but man, that is close to Bermuda to making a landfall as just a catastrophic hurricane. GFS, what does it do? It's a very strong hurricane also, major, Tuesday morning. Getting into Wednesday morning, it passes a little bit more to the west and northwest. So it's a little bit of a better scenario, and then it heads on out. What about the Euro ensembles with Humberto? Most members slip it to the west, but there is a few members that get awfully close. You see right here, some of these members are getting very, very, very close. And we also need to watch if Imelda gets yanked back to the east. It could yank Imelda right into you guys. There is a very, very small outside chance you guys could get impacted in Bermuda by 2 tropical systems. It would take a lot of things happening, but it's possible. So just a little bit of love to Humberto, and I want to explain why this rapidly intensifies. Right now, it's kind of dealing with just a little bit of shear because of this flow from this basically decaying upper level low. So you see this is flow at 200 millibars, about 40,000 feet up in the air. So you can see this flow kind of coming down like this and sort of hitting the system somewhat. And that is what's prevented this from really taking off over the last day or so. But it's a hurricane right now, so the Euro is actually, initializing this system a little bit weaker than what it really is. But watch how this millibar begins to dramatically drop as we get into this weekend and then eventually all the way into Monday morning. So this happens because of this expansive outflow, and this is valid for Sunday evening. So this loses the influence of this upper level low, and all of a sudden we have this expansive outflow. So basically this system begins to ventilate very well as air is being dispersed out away from the system. This allows for more air to rise through the system, allowing for convection to fire around the core of the system, creating a moist environment. Now, I was listening to Levi's video who runs Tropical Tidbits. The only thing that could prevent this from rapidly intensifying is if future Imelda really strengthens and then whiplashes Humberto with its outflow, creates basically shear. That is possible. So it's pretty wild how the atmosphere works, right? But that's enough with Humberto. Let's focus on sort of what we're going to cover here is we're going to cover impacts from Imelda, and then we're going to cover what can promote strengthening. And we'll do that first, and then we'll go into impacts. So this is for Sunday evening. So a lot of people are wondering, how strong can Imelda get? Well, I'm actually going to show you the Euro, and this is at 250 millibars, so between 35 40,000 feet up in the atmosphere. So you see these areas in blue and slashes of green. This is kind of a jet streak and just flow. So you got flow kind of diving down into here and then kind of shooting back up like this. Okay, and here is Imelda right here, future Imelda. So this flow kind of coming down right here into like areas of the Gulf actually might work up against this system and bring some dry air, especially at the bottom flank of this. But you see with our system right here how air is being dispersed out this way in the upper levels of the atmosphere. This creates a favorable environment on this entire half of the system, the northern half of the system, because air is being dispersed out away. This is allowing for more air to rise. So this is basically allowing for a very moist environment in this entire area out ahead of this system. And that's why we are kind of worried about a pre-flooding event way out ahead of this system. Okay? But you continue to work forward here, and it continues to kind of have that look. It just looks like your typical late September, early October storm system, but you continue, I think, to get a lot of dry air kind of working up under this system, but kind of the disbursement of air here. So a favorable upper wind pattern here, and this could give it a boost, but this is going to provide a lot of dry air under the system, and we certainly got to watch out for the tornado threat with such a dry streak of air in certain areas of the atmosphere with this system. That dry air can actually help aid in a tornado threat. We'll speak on that when we need to. But this is what's working. So I really think you kind of have two things working for the strengthening of this system. And before I say what those two things are, let's also show you sea surface temperature. So this is in Celsius. So you got 29, 28 degrees Celsius. That's equivalent to basically in the 80s in Fahrenheit. So in this little area right here where the system could go through, the sea surface temperatures are plenty warm enough for intensification. So your sea surface temperatures, right? Check that off the box. That promotes a strengthening of a tropical system. And then you got, hopefully I didn't knock it off the screen. I did not. And then you got air being dispersed out away from the system on the northern half. That creates a better upper wind pattern. The thing kind of working against the system is a dry air slot that'll come in right into here. And that's when I'll show you this. Okay? It's a great example of it. Remember I was drawing all those arrows kind of doing like this up in this region? And then the arrows kind of coming down like this, like here. And I was talking about dry air. Well, it shows you right here. The brown areas, that's dry air. The green areas, that's moist air. So you can see a big plume as we're getting into Monday morning of moist air surging out way ahead of this system into areas of the Carolinas and into eventually the mid-Atlantic. So that is because you have a favorable environment for rising air out ahead of this system, the dispersion of air. Dry air is working back behind the system. So I really think that this could be kind of an ugly hurricane, sort of a half-a-cane where one part of the system is really significant. The other is kind of, could still be significant, but sort of void of convection because of the dry air kind of getting sucked up into the cyclonic rotation of the storm itself. And you continue to move this forward, you can see a big slug of moisture already well ahead of this storm system based off the Euro. And the Euro doesn't even make landfall initially. But look at all this moisture out ahead of this system, and look at all the dry air kind of coming into the system. So it's a wild setup, and all this moisture could actually get slung up against into the western Carolinas. So it's pretty wild. And it actually looks like the system, as we get later into the week, kind of gains more tropical characteristics back and kind of wraps itself with more moisture again as it makes another landfall. Well, it makes it actual first technical landfall. So I hope that makes sense, and that kind of leads us into how much rainfall could happen with this system. And listen, the Storm Prediction Center has increased the forecast again from last night's video. So between now and this time next Friday, they're going for over a half a foot of rain in areas of the Carolinas now, up into even areas of southern Virginia. I mean, look at areas of like Raleigh, 5-6 inches of rain, Myrtle Beach over 6 inches. So the rainfall is going to continue to change. Please don't look at this graphic and think, okay, well, this is exactly what's going to happen next week, and it's not going to change. If you watch any videos on the weather and you walk away with that mindset, you're doing it wrong, folks. And that's how you get miscommunication out there. So this is the forecast right now, rainfall totals. Just because it's a forecast doesn't mean it can't change. Okay? As far as steering currents, last thing we'll cover here. Okay. High pressure is right here. You can see flow with the wind barbs kind of going around this high pressure just like this, right? And you can look at the wind barbs here, like, for example, let's look at, I don't know, like this wind barb here. You see how the barb is kind of pointing like this side? That means the flow's coming out that direction. So the flow is going just like this around a center of high pressure, which is right here. You also got this feature right here, which is a cutoff flow. So flow's kind of coming down this cutoff flow like this, and then the flow kind of starts to go around the ridge like that, and then like this. And then there's kind of two flows working in tandem in this area right here. So where's our two tropical systems? That's Humberto, that's Imelda. And that is what the Euro is showing that these two systems should be by around tomorrow evening. So high pressure is steering Humberto just like this, right? How strong would this system be in the short term? When I say short term, I'm talking about between now and the next 24 to 48 hours. If it's stronger, then it's going to probably position itself further north faster. In that case, it would feel the flow around this high pressure more. It'll get kind of entrenched into the flow more. Therefore, it'll get picked up faster around the flow and take that quicker landfall scenario. If it remains weaker in the shorter term, and keep in mind that the flow around this cutoff low will work in tandem with that to sort of jolt this up like this or like that. If it's weaker in the shorter term, then it might kind of drift around over here and do something different, right? I think it eventually will strengthen, but if it waits around in this area for too long, it gives this time for Humberto to kind of come into the picture right here and then tug on it more like this. If Imelda slips this way fast enough, it's not going to be influenced by Humberto behind it, if that makes sense. Okay? Euro is kind of a happy median. Okay, what happens here is it's kind of slow. Monday morning, it's right here. Imelda, Humberto at this point is a major hurricane. So it's about to head into the coastline, right? But Humberto is right here, Imelda. But as this continues to kind of work its way like this or like this, it's going to kind of yank on it a little bit. The cyclonic flow around the system itself starts to pull on it. So the flow is kind of working like this, right? So it's actually going to try to pull on it like that. So that's why it doesn't make that landfall initially on the Euro. And then as Humberto is moving away, the flow is detached right here, the yank, if you will, and Imelda can kind of take control of its own destiny again as far as steering currents, and that's why it eventually kind of does its own thing again and goes back into the Georgia or Carolinas. I hope that makes sense. I feel like I explained that a little bit better this time. So that's all I got, guys. We're in full tracking mode. We'll do it again tonight. I will mention I'm going on a date night with my wife tonight, so the video will be later. Excited about that, but let's create a timestamp, folks, and let's do our Bible devotion really fast, and then we'll be on our way. Okay, so timestamp here. This morning we're James chapter 5, verse 13. And this is a quick one. It says, "Is anyone among you suffering? He should pray. Is anyone cheerful? He should sing praises." That's it. So I said, the key thing to take from this verse is to always go to God, regardless of the situation, negative or positive. Every tough situation, whatever that may be, go to God in prayer. When you feel like everything is just going awesome, give God the glory and praise Him. But remember, praise Him during the lows and praise Him during the highs. So just to hit on this a couple times, like I always try to do, kind of relate it to my situation and just try to be relatable, right? I'm going to try to think of one way or the other with both situations. And let's start off with when things are going bad. A lot of people, that's when, they might choose to go to church. That is phenomenal. Awesome. Great time. And then some people take the route when things are going bad to not go to God at all because you went to God and you think He's not answering your prayers. So then you kind of get far away. So I think sometimes you can branch both directions in lows. You can branch both directions in highs also. And this is what people don't think about much. So with the highs, with the joys of life, when everything's been going great for consecutive weeks in a row, of course, people say, God is good, glory to God. It's awesome. He's taking care of me, this, that, and the other. But then there's some people when things are going so good for so long, they get comfortable, kind of complacent, and then they just don't talk to God as much. And I don't think people think about that route as much, but that is a thing. So it's important in all these situations to go to God, talk to Him, pray, be thankful. I know for me, sometimes when things have just been going great for a while, I just stop. Sometimes I'm just walking in my yard, mowing the grass, at work, driving in my car, heck, even in the shower. And I'm just like, God, I just want to let you know, things have been awesome lately. I know inevitably something's probably going to loom down the road, but I just want to thank you for the calm times that I've had as of late and the just lack of stress. So I'll leave you with that. God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful day, and we'll do it again tonight.